So many of us parents sometimes feel trapped. Sometimes, yes, by our kids' behavior, but also sometimes just by our own stuff. You know what I'm talking about. Our old patterns, our emotional triggers, nervous system responses that just seem to hijack us in the heat of the moment. We love our kids more than anything, but yet we keep reacting, we keep snapping, and we keep falling into that same loop of anger, frustration, and guilt. And it feels like no matter how hard you try, you just can't seem to break the cycle. You're not broken, and you're not failing, and you're definitely not alone. That's why I'm so excited to bring this conversation to you today on the Emotionally Intelligent Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Pinto, you know me, and today I have the incredible Justin Sunseri. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist. He's the creator of the Stuck Not Broken podcast, which I love, and he's a leading voice in making the Polyvagal Theory simple and life-changing for everyday people. So he's a therapist and a coach, and he believes that the world needs a new understanding of mental health. I am so with him on this. One that is really clear, or one that is practical, and it doesn't rely on abstract psychobabble or fluffy woo-woo. His approach is refreshingly grounded and really validating. One of the things I actually really love about his work is that Justin says we are not meant to fix ourselves when we're dysregulated, because fixing implies that we're broken. Instead, we're meant to notice and acknowledge and support our nervous system with what it needs in that moment. It is such a powerful reframe, and I think a total game changer, especially for parents. So in this episode today, we are going to explore how your child's nervous system drives their behavior, how to co-regulate when you're triggered, and why emotionally intelligent parenting starts with actually understanding your own state first. I thought I knew a whole lot about co-regulation and self-regulation. Oh my God, he rewrote everything I thought I knew. So I think you're going to love this too. And actually, after we stopped recording, Justin and I hung on for a few more minutes and we had a chat, and we both actually shared about our personal experiences with anxiety, especially around the topic of professional speaking, which we both do. I even opened up to him about my fainting. I've talked a little bit about it on the podcast and on YouTube and in my videos, so you guys get it. But I'm so glad that using the polyvagal theory and what he teaches about the nervous system, I've really come to understand what my body is actually telling me in those moments. The conversation was really honest, it was really human, and it was incredibly connecting. He is such a great guy. So if you've been feeling sometimes stuck in these reactive cycles, or maybe you're exhausted by that emotional tug of war of parenting, this episode is going to leave you feeling seen and give you a whole new lens for creating change. Just before we begin, I want to acknowledge the Darug Nation. They are the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, work, and record these videos. I pay my respects to all First Nations people, their elders and ancestors, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and I stand in solidarity towards a shared future. Okay, enjoy. Hey, Justin, how are you?
Good. Every time I hear that recording in progress, it's like, oh, now it's official.
Yeah, it's quick, switch on. It is so
Yeah.
good to have you on. How have you been?
I'm nervous, but overall really good. I always get a little bit nervous doing these things.
Yeah, and
Super happy to be here and honored you invited me. Thank you.
yeah, I know what you mean. You're welcome. I'm really glad to have you on. I have listened to your podcast, Stuck Not Broken, for a long time. And actually, there was an episode that came out. Oh, when did I listen to it? I was driving and I was like, yes, I have the opportunity to listen to a big chunk. And I don't know if you remember, you probably remember, it was one with an Aussie. You had a conversation with, I think, an Unstucking Academy Aussie, Eva.
Yeah.
And she talked about getting out of her sort of stuck. That was
Wait,
brilliant.
an Aussie what? What was it?
What did I say? An Aussie Unstucking Academy person?
That's not what you said. I heard, was it Beaver? What was it?
Oh my God, I'm going to have to listen back. I don't know.
Maybe I may have completely misheard that.
So
It would be person.
she's an Aussie. And when I heard her voice, because I was looking forward to listening to it anyway. And then I heard an
Yeah.
Aussie voice and I was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's really cool. There's in the academy, there's people all over, but there's a few people from Australia that are like, oh, you know this place and I know this place, and they've kind of connected. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, that is so cool. So your academy is global, right?
Yeah. We have just a little bit. It's not a huge amount of people, but we have people from Australia and Canada. There's someone from Israel, South Africa. Is kind of all over the place. It's pretty cool.
Wow. Well, this stuff is
Yeah.
universal, isn't it? Like we're obviously going to be talking about the polyvagal theory and what that means for especially us as parents and our kids and maybe even people who work with kids. But I just think if you're a human being with a nervous system, you so need to know about this stuff. Is that right? Would you agree?
I think it's extremely helpful. Yeah. I would definitely recommend people, and this is like the starting point for I think I recommend people start here as far as like regulation, emotional regulation, trauma recovery. If you can learn this stuff, it is very normalizing, it's validating, and it just instantly there comes this reduction in self-judgment, I think, and self-blame and self-shame. All that kind of comes down a little bit, at least a little bit. And
Yeah,
it
yeah.
opens up this whole pathway of like, oh, now we can, there's like a pathway here I can follow now.
Yeah, wow. Okay. So before we begin, tell me why stuck not broken. I've like kind of I know what you talk about or what you mean with the name of the podcast, but explain it for people because that's a weird name for a podcast.
That phrase, like, it just stuck in my mind. It was like, I don't know, years ago when I first started the podcast, obviously. No, it used to be called Polyvagal Podcast, but the phrase stuck not broken just like, I don't know, I couldn't get out of my brain. But basically, it's the idea that I don't think the people I work with in therapy or coaching or in my community, like, I don't think people are broken. To me, that seems very final and hopeless, and I don't think that's the case whatsoever. I I see the people I work with as stuck, as wanting to go forward and make some sort of change, but they are just stuck. That's it. And then once we get unstuck, it's like, oh, here's the path. Now I can follow this path and get to wherever the unstuckness takes them. But to me, it's the momentum's there. Like someone's not in therapy unless they have momentum, right? Unless they have something that's like pushing them or pulling them forward. So that to me, that's not broken. It's just like there's a wall in the way. We got to figure out what the wall is. And I think polyvagal theory provides that. And so now it's like, once we know what the wall is, okay, well, how do we work around it, get through it, go over it, whatever? Like, how do we, or maybe gently give it a hug and work with it? That's it. So it's not broken. It's just, we're just stuck behind a wall, but
Yeah.
we can move forward.
Yeah, there's a lot of hope there. I think that's a game
Yeah.
changer, seeing it like that. So
Yeah.
let's jump in straight off the bat. What is the polyvagal theory? Give us a rundown on that for people who are maybe unfamiliar or totally brand new to it. And then we'll dive into like self-regulation stuff.
Yeah. The polyvagal theory, in essence, is the science of how we respond to safety and danger, I think is the simplest way to put it. Um, to be a little bit more complex, it's the scientific understanding, discovery that we have two parasympathetic nervous systems. So people have probably heard of flight, fight, and freeze. That is not the whole picture, but it's the common picture. But really, we have these biological pathways that are responsible for us feeling safe. And when we're safe, we can connect with each other. We can hug and smile and laugh and get close to our pets. All these wonderful, we can think critically, all kinds of wonderful things. But when we can't be safe, then we go through this biological shift into defensive activation. The first one is flight. Our body wants to escape to create space. And if that doesn't work, then we use fight activation, where we actually, since we can't run away, we get closer to the danger in an attempt to scare it off, basically, or get it to back off. And then if that doesn't work, we have another defensive um, option. Not option, the word, we have another defensive step to sequence. It's not like we choose these things. But the last one's called shutdown, and that is where we collapse. And in the extreme, we can faint or play dead. That's the idea. But really, it's collapsing and immobilizing. And all of these defensive state shifts increase the chances of survival, even the last one, shutdown. So the polyvagal theory says, hey, there's this safety biological pathway and this shutdown biological pathway, ventral vagal and dorsal vagal, and they come from the brainstem and utilize the vagus nerve. And that is distinct from the sympathetic one. And so polyvagal shows us that these things, these states, these biological states are sequential and they're not against each other. They work together. It's not like it's parasympathetic versus sympathetic. That's kind of the older way of looking at things. So these states are normal. They're natural. We still need them day to day, even though we're not living in the wild. And they turn off and on throughout the day based on work or parenting or traffic or all kinds of stuff. These things are still alive within us, and they're actually quite predictable as far as going down or coming up.
All right, that's really helpful. Yeah. So you made a point there. You said it's not a choice. It's not like we choose to move between different states. I'm thinking about
Yeah.
just so many situations personally with me, but with my kids as well. So I have two kids, and there are many times when they will activate. I love that word as well because it kind of takes out the judgment. Sometimes we just
Mm.
think our kids are being, I don't know, rat bags, or they're being like they're pushing our buttons on purpose when we've asked them to, start their homework and they're like, I don't want it, it's boring, or
Yeah.
like, tell me a little bit about the it's not a choice, maybe when we or our kids might sort of react, quote unquote, react in a
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. It's not a biological state that we're choosing to be in. Like if it was up to us, if it was a conscious choice, we would always be in our safe and social state, right? We'd always feel playful and calm and maybe even happy and reflective and all those wonderful things. Like that's what we'd want, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a choice. So the same thing applies for our children. As adults, hopefully we have more distress tolerance and we can stay in our safe and social state even when there's something that is otherwise activating. Kids have far less, uh, kids typically have far less or should have far less self-regulation as far as that goes. Like their safety state is still developing. And that comes from co-regulation, which I'm sure we'll get into. So for kids, when they are challenged, their stress tolerance is a lot smaller than ours. Their vagal brake, which is the influence of their safety state on their heart, it's weaker. And so they're probably more likely to go into defensive activation like flight or fight or even shutdown. They're probably more likely, even with otherwise trivial, I guess, stimuli or lack of stimuli, like they're probably more likely to go into a defensive state. They're not choosing to. It's not a choice. It's just it's a biological shift, and then us as parents will have our own biological shifts in response to that, probably.
So really good. You know what came to mind as you were saying that last couple of
Mm.
sentences is that, trivial things. For example, this is a common, example that sometimes we use when you offer a little child, maybe a toddler, if you offer them the red cup, not the blue cup, oh my God. And then there is a giant meltdown, or there's obviously this
Yeah.
reactivity. And so, as you're saying, like, how beautiful is it to see it through a different lens, that my child isn't just pushing my buttons and wanting the stupid other color
No,
cup.
no.
They're actually having did you call
Yeah.
it a biological shift, like something inside of them that
Yeah.
shifts?
Yes. What comes to my mind though is no, it's not necessarily an intentional, trying to push our buttons as parents, but it also could be. I mean, especially as kids get more sophisticated with these things. But yeah, I mean, something like that, which is like super, just it's a color of a cup, but for some reason they may have had this like, that's the one, that's the special one, the right color, they covet it, and then not getting that resource, the right colored cup, that may trigger this defensive shift within them.
Mm.
And their defensive shifts are, they're probably more extreme than adults. So it's not a choice they're making. It's not a rational decision to irritate us. There's no blueprint. They're not like scheming out ahead of time how to get
Yeah.
under our skin. That's no. I remember I had my friend, but we have two kids. With our first baby, my daughter, I forget the context of it, but she was crying about something. And just, normal baby crying needs something. If my wife and I are like, okay, well, it's, feeding or rest or this or that. It's pretty simple, right? But my friend at the time who didn't have kids, he was like, she's manipulating you.
Hmm.
It's a baby. Like, come on. It's just ridiculous. Like, there's no, I don't think any child is blueprinting these things out ahead of time and like waiting for that moment of the cup. Now it's time. And then launching into this defensive thing to irritate us. I do, of course, like, yeah, there's learned behavior. So a kid's going to learn that if I act this way, I might get what I want. Sure. But we're talking more about that, like that initial reaction.
Yeah. Yeah, so many funny
Yeah.
stories like that. Okay, so can you talk to us about firstly, I think still a lot of people think that self-regulation means just calming yourself. So
Mm,
can you, and I know it's so much more complex than that, but maybe can you talk a little bit about self-regulation versus co-regulation
yeah.
and explain that for us?
Yeah. Self the effect of self-regulation, the outcome could be a calmer self, but not necessarily, I don't think. Self-regulation is when an individual, in like in our context, like a parent, is able to stay in their safety state enough, not perfectly. That's not realistic. We're going to get we have feelings about our kids. So and the expectation is not that we're going to be happy all the time. That's not realistic. I think it's okay to feel frustrated, but self-regulation means we can feel these things, but still retain enough access to our safety state to where those things don't take over and dominate, you know? So a self-regulated parent, I would argue, could feel frustration and still communicate with their child effectively. A self-regulated parent has enough access to their safety state, and that would come across as, I love you, but like this is not okay. This behavior is not okay. I love the heck out of you. I expect the best out of you, but I am not okay with this. Like you can be irritated and frustrated and disappointed, but still come from that state of safety, love, connection, compassion. So that's a self-regulated individual. When we lose self-regulation, well, now it becomes more like, how could you? What's wrong with you? Why aren't you like your sibling? And it's more like shaming and blaming. That is someone who is not, I would argue, is not self-regulated. They've lost enough access to their safety state. And now their own defensive state, whether it's flight, fight, shut down, or freeze, their own defensive state is now the dominant factor and driving their thoughts and their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's self-regulation. It's the ability to maintain our own safety state enough. And co-regulation is the ability of one person who's in their safety state to provide cues of safety to another. In our context, that would be a parent who is self-regulated can now provide cues of co-regulation or cues of safety, excuse me, which would lead to co-regulation. So a parent who is saying, I'm disappointed, but I love the heck out of you. I know you can do better. I expect it. Here's our, plan of action. That parent, even though they're upset, is still going to give warmth and positive expectation, just like a teacher, a teacher that's like kind of a, firm, but still loving, like you feel that from them and you feed off of it. So a parent could do the same thing. They're still self-regulated and they're giving those cues of safety. Maybe they're smiling. Maybe they have their face is able to move. Like when we're in our safety state, we can move our face more effectively, like our eyebrows and smile and whatnot. So that parent is going to give cues of safety, even if they're challenged. They're going to give cues of safety, and the child who's probably in more of a defensive state is going to receive those and hopefully access enough of their safety state to visibly calm down. It might not be calm, but it calmer. They'll have more access to their own safety state through the safety cues that the parent is giving off.
Okay, so when you talk about cues of safety, are they things like a soft facial expression, warm eyes, like a tone of
Yeah,
voice or a prosody that's not like monotone and pissed off?
yeah,
Is it things like that, and body language, facial expression? Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, yeah. All those things. Yeah, the answer is yes. I'm not sure to add to that.
Cool.
Yeah, if you can do those things, and again, it doesn't have to be perfect. But if it's enough, if you have enough vocal prosody, you can still be firm, but you can have enough vocal prosody that you're still, these are biological, it's a biological communication. And so if you have enough access to it, you'll still give it across, and the child will, or anybody else is going to receive that. Just like, not just like, but when you talk to a dog in the right kind of voice, they get excited, they get happy, you see it all over their body, their tail wags, right? Kids may not be as obvious, but it's the same idea. When we use a certain type of voice and facial expression and one gentle touch, these things cue safety to another person.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go on the flip side now. What might a dysregulated nervous system look like in a child? And how can parents maybe recognize that and what's going on beneath the surface of the behavior, like beneath the yelling or the foot stomping or the teenager who's like slamming doors? How can we kind of
Yeah.
recognize, oh, that's a dysregulated nervous system. That's not just him pushing my buttons or being rude.
It can show up so many different ways. Let's talk about it as a lack of something first. Let's talk about this as a lack of something I've done with my daughter. She's 16 now, and she hates this, but I can tell when she's had like I know when she needs downtime from, like, she's overstimulated or whatever, or if she's too grumpy, or like I'm like I can tell. And we have a very elastic parenting. We're not, helicopter parents. We're not controlling really at all, really. But it's like, all right, you need a break. It's too far. Let's pull it back. And then she'll say, okay, fine. What do I have to do to to get my phone back or whatever? And this is hard to do, but I'll tell her, I'll know when you're ready. That's terrible. It's not concrete parenting advice. There's no method there. It's just me knowing that she's not ready for it. And I'll ask her, can you give me a hug? And she'll say no. And I'm like, all right. Like, I know, I can tell you're not in that safety state. You're not well regulated enough to, like, get your privileges back. And rarely do we have to do this. She's a really good kid. But like, that's my barometers. I can tell, like, if you can't smile genuinely, if you can't give a hug, if you can't speak with your own vocal prosody, like, I recognize these things. And so I'll know. And then she'll be upset at me, and she'll, march off to her room, and she'll, have a little bit of downtime. She'll have quiet time, and she'll come back out and she'll say, all right, yeah, I'm ready. Like, she feels it. She knows,
Yeah.
you know? And
Totally.
and I'm like, all right, well, can you give a hug now? And she's like, yeah, I love you. I love you. And hey, what happened back there? Well, I was doing this, and yeah, sorry about that. And so I'm not giving this as parenting advice, because this can easily become very controlling to a dysregulated parent. Like, if you hear someone talk like this, who comes from a dysregulated place, this could be very controlling. So I'm not recommending this. This is just me. Like, I'm well regulated enough to know what's going on with my kids and to not take things personally. And like, so for the most part, although my daughter's getting better at finding my buttons. So, so, so when I do that, when I tell her, like, look, I just know you're not ready, and I know it inside. Uh, Come back to me when you're in a better place, like when you're more well regulated. I know, so it's not, I just don't want people to take this and run with it and be like, yes, I can demand my kid hugs, and be like, no, that's not what I'm saying. No, 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 no. So that's to answer your question. It's a lack of, children cannot do these things. That's how we know they're not well regulated. They don't have playfulness. They don't have vocal prosody. They don't have gentle touch. They can't get close. They can't make gentle eye contact. When all those things are gone, that's a good indication that unless there's like a autism spectrum thing going on, that's a pretty good indication that they have lost access to their safety state and are maybe in some level of dysregulation. But even, kids that have some flight fight activation, they can still be regulated enough, and they'll kind of keep it under control. And, like, that's kind of different. Dysregulated, I would call their defensive state, like, it takes over. And now it's really deciding or swinging in their decision making. They are slamming that door now, versus just saying, like, I'm really upset. I need space, Dad. Let's take this up another time. Like, that would be, they're aware enough, and there's some flight fight maybe, but they're regulated and they're communicating. Cool. But once it's like door slamming and yelling or name calling or breaking things, like, clearly dysregulation. Not only have we lost access to our safety state, but now the defensive activation is really dominating and being destructive. So that would be more like flight fight. It's obvious, it's loud. Either they're creating space and leaving or encroaching upon space, getting closer. And that could be verbally speaking louder. That's kind of a way of taking up space. But if those don't work, they may shift into a shutdown state, which is really more like I give up, collapsed, alone in the room kind of thing. That's dysregulated, but more shut down.
I knew this conversation was going to be really good. I'm like, I should be taking notes. That was really comprehensive. I know there's much more, but just hearing all those points and things, I think that gives a really good picture for parents. Something that came to mind as you were talking about, marching off to the room and door slamming. Sometimes we have parents who feel like if their child is in their room and the door's slammed and they're really mad about something, I feel like I need to be going in there and talking to them and helping them and finding out what's wrong. And most of the time I'm like, I mean, you can offer that, but you also, it is okay. It is respectful to the child, but also their nervous system and where they're at to just sometimes wait. Does that make sense?
Totally. I agree. I agree. There's for my wife and I, like, there's some things that, especially as they get older, like, no, we got to talk about this. This is some serious stuff going on, like at her school. Like, she's an awesome kid. We don't have to worry about her, but there's a lot of bad influences. And so we want transparency and we want to know what's going on. And so it's like, no, we got to talk about this. Like, what's going on here? You know? So there are some issues we'll push, but for the most part, yeah, like, you need space, go ahead, take space. We're totally fine with that. If you need to calm down or you just want alone time, some solitude, fine, whatever. Like, if that's not, we're trusting that she's able to, and my son too, that they're able to do what they need to, and we'll step in when we need to and say, like, no, you need, we can tell you need time, some downtime. You need some like decompression time, and you're too wound up to recognize it. And saying this isn't going to go very far because they're too wound up. But like, we know, like, we've crossed over into like a little bit of dysregulation here. Let's just take a break, pull it back, and you can have your alone time. We'll hands off, do your thing. But otherwise, yeah, if they need time, especially if they communicate to it, like, my son, he's 9, almost 10. And he said, like, Daddy, I'm really frustrated now. I just need to, like, go in my room, give me some time, and I'll come check back in. I'm like, all right, cool. No problem. You know?
Wow.
So yeah, sometimes it's awesome. Go ahead, do your thing. But I think there are definitely some topics where it's like, no, we got to talk about this.
Yeah, fair. Especially in this day and age. Geez. So another question I had is, do you talk to your kids about how deep do you go with? Obviously, you talk about being regulated and that using that language. Do you talk about activation and and safety state? Like, what do you teach your kids?
I keep it super general. If they want to know, like, more in detail, they've never asked.
I was going to say, do they know what you do?
No.
Are they interested?
Well, it's my daughter. She used to help me with my Instagram. I've kind of had like a love-hate relationship with Instagram, mostly a hate relationship. And I was paying her to post some quotes of mine. And so she was like reading the stuff and she was reading about shutdown. And it's like, so I don't know what she took from that, but something. No, it's more the somatic pieces of it. That is more of a piece of dialogue, especially when they were younger. So as my daughter's gotten older, it's still like body awareness, but it really nothing like too much. We're not, or I'm not too like over the top. I'm a pretty normal parent, you know. Um, I think what I bring in is the somatic, a little bit awareness of like what's happening. Hey, back then, what happened inside of you? Like, what were you feeling? Help me understand what was going on. My son's pretty darn good at like explaining what's happening within him when he has an emotion. He'll explain like what it feels like. I think kids are pretty darn intuitive with that, and it's up to us not to like teach them exactly, but to foster it and like and build it. And so with him, I've done a lot of that. With my daughter, she's really well self-regulated, pretty independent, very contemplative. She's does her own like downtime and solitude. So like before bed, she has her like little routines. So I'm not heavy-handed with hey, safety state and ventral vagal and sympathetic. No, I don't do that really much at all. It's just talking to them, but with an inquisitive mind toward like, hey, what happened inside of you when this was going on? Or even sharing myself, like, this is what I feel right now, and this is what's happening inside of me, without like being afraid of that. It's just a factual piece of the context of life. You know what I mean? Like it's just there, the way we feel, the butterflies or the increased heart rate, or it's just something that's there, and it's okay to talk about.
Yeah, I love that because I think a lot of us were, as kids, told to, well, not maybe necessarily explicitly told, but we felt like we needed to shove that stuff down and
Oh yeah,
ignore how we were feeling because our maybe parents or caregivers said things like, it's cold outside, put a jacket on, or,
yeah,
you
oh
like
yeah,
this food, eat it. And, you're fine. You're not nervous. You know everyone here, go play. So especially for
yeah,
me personally, but a lot of parents I, work with and help, we have had to learn how to tune back into those interoceptive cues of how we actually feel inside
yeah,
and what those messages are telling us. So I'm glad you kind of brought that up. And yeah, I think it's really powerful to talk to kids about it.
yeah. Nothing super special. It's just a feeling. It's just an emotion, and that's really it. I don't make a huge deal out of it. Um, but I do try to bring attention to it,
Mm.
you know?
So what is the difference between a child being regulated and a child being just compliant?
That's a really good question. We may have to parse this one out together, okay?
Yeah.
Truly regulated would be they can recognize, well, I mean, at the extreme, it would be tons of safety activation. They're happy, they're playful, they're following the rules, they have empathy, getting along with others, they can socialize, make friends. Like that would be super well regulated. So it's still regulated to have defensive activation, but notice it and maybe go seek out some co-regulation from a parent. That's still, they can notice it, feel it, and then go get a hug. My son's really good at that. That's still regulated, and then it's just seeking out a little bit of comfort to help calm their defensive activation. That's regulated. It's still regulated to notice like anger, some fight activation, and say, I need space right now. Oof, like to tense up and say, I just need space. I'll come back when I'm ready. That's regulated. That's on the edge of dysregulation, but that's good. That's really good. Compliant is actually kind of like what I was expressing before, and this is not something I'm recommending to parents, but it's like you tell the kids, hey, you need like just decompress. Privileges are off limits right now. Like just you got to bring it way down. And then they would say, what do I have to do? That would be, I'm not changing my feelings. I'm not connecting. I'm not taking space. I'm just going to change my behavior to appease you to get what I want. That would be compliance. So that kid learns to get what I want or need. And this brings us back to earlier where I mentioned some kids kind of they learn behaviorally to get their needs met or their wants met through what works. So if a kid does the thing that the parent wants them to do, but is still angry or in fight activation, then that would be compliance. That would be not self-regulation. It would just be getting what they want without altering anything within them. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. So I'm getting and I agree with you. Compliant behavior can be, I'm doing what is expected or I'm meeting the expectation, and yet I am not in my safety state and I am not regulated. And sometimes we see that, particularly in classrooms today, I think with
Oh
just the
yeah.
busyness and with the, mainstream schooling, and then especially with neurodivergent kiddos, oh my goodness, the amount of masking and just absolutely
Mm,
holding it together. That does not mean just because the child's completing the worksheet or I don't know, doing whatever they are, doesn't necessarily means they feel safe and are
no.
accessing that safety state.
Yeah. Yeah. There's schools have tons of challenges. It's depending on where you live and whatnot, but there's a ton of challenges. My daughter's school's overall, it's safe for the most part, but wow, there's all the things that a parent could worry about happening all at once in one classroom. It's like luckily she's self-regulated enough to not be tempted or give into those things or even be interested. And like she'll come home and say like, they're like vaping in class. Like, why are they doing that? And she'll, yeah, it's bad. And she'll say, the kid next to me is just he has his worksheet, but he's not doing it. Why isn't he doing his work? Like, just get it done. And then she'll see at the end of the semester, the kids are like frantically trying to get stuff done. And she's like, if you had just done it earlier, you wouldn't be like what?
It's
Just come on. Yeah. I don't know how I got here, but yeah. Oh yeah. Schools, classrooms are extremely challenging. And I used to work in a public school district for 8 years or so. That ended a couple years ago, but wow, there's a lot of challenges there. There's
yeah.
a lot of dysregulated kids who come from very dysregulated homes.
Yeah, I think this should be like, I don't know, on the curriculum 101, this stuff. As soon as you have kids or before you have kids, or if you're in
Yeah.
school, I'm just like everywhere, polyvagal theory and obviously emotional intelligence, because that they just go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. I love this one. And I think so many people listening are going to lock on and think, yes, what can give us some like tips and ideas? How can parents co-regulate with their child when they themselves feel triggered or overwhelmed, or they are not accessing their safety state? What are some things that you might suggest?
Yeah. So co-regulation will spontaneously happen. You don't have to plan it out. And if you try to do it, it's going to come across fake. And it's not going to, I don't think it's going to land. Yeah. So if I'm irritated, if a parent is like too irritated, too into fight activation, and they try to smile through it, it's going to be creepy and weird and terrifying and send mixed messages. So like if your posture is leaning forward and tense and clenched and you're raising your voice, but you're trying to smile through it and say, I love you, like that's not co-regulation. That is terrifying. That's like horror movie stuff. So what I would invite parents to do is think of it as don't the goal is not to behave like a co-regulator. The goal is to self-regulate, which will spontaneously lead to co-regulate. You don't have to plan it out. It just naturally happens. When you're self-regulated, like I had a few days, was it like couple weeks ago? I was really irritated, really stressful. I was doing way too much and not doing enough of my own self-regulation. But it was building and building and building and just really irritated one night, probably more into the dysregulation side. Even though I teach this stuff, by the way, I'm not perfect. I'm just a person. Like I think I do pretty
Same.
darn well, but yeah, like if I go too far, if I go too hard into work, if I don't take, do my decompression time, like it builds up. I'm human. We're all okay. So there was one night where it was too much, and my wife was like, "Dude, you need to bring it down." Like I wasn't yelling at my kids, but I was definitely like making snappy comments, and I wasn't being super considerate. So I was like, "Yeah, I think you're right." And so I just stopped. I went outside in my backyard, which is like I love being in my backyard. It's a really good place to self-regulate, calm down, look at some greenery and whatnot. I sat out there for like 5 minutes, and then I was looking at we have a pool with a hot tub, and I was looking at the hot tub, and in my mind, this idea came to mind, which was it would feel really good to just walk, to go in the hot tub and just walk around in circles. I know it would look weird, but rather than judging it, I was wearing shorts, luckily, so I just did it. I got in the hot tub and I walked around in circles. And the point was, I was self-regulated enough to know I had lingering flight fight activation, and the walking, the resistance of the water was a way to mindfully feel and release the lingering flight fight activation. So I did that until it felt like, it's just, wow, I feel way more settled. I sat down with my feet in the water and just mindfully felt that and touched the water with my fingers. And I think the whole thing took like 15 minutes maybe. And I was breathing. I noticed I was breathing way better, way less tense into my belly. So that was self-regulation. I self-regulated out of probably a bit too much defensive activation. So I self-regulated. So I didn't go inside and like pretend to connect with my family. I just wanted to. I went inside. The first thing I did was I connected with each of them individually. I said, "Hey, I'm sorry. And I love you." And gave them a hug, and they were, it was fine. But it wasn't like a ploy. It wasn't planned out. It wasn't a blueprint. It was just, it felt like I needed to do that. And so I followed that impulse. So when it comes to how do you co-regulate, well, you got to self-regulate first. Once you're self-regulated, your body will naturally tell you to go connect with your pets or your people. And if that's happening, that is co-regulation, because when you do that, you're going to get close to them. You're going to have more vocal prosody. You're going to give an apology with a gentle hug or something like that. That's natural co-regulation versus, grinning and bearing it and faking it.
Yeah, wow. So would it be too basic to say if you're feeling like you need to co-regulate with a child who's upset, then just focus on yourself, just regulate your own nervous system?
If you need to, that is probably the most impactful thing you can do. Honestly, like it really, really is. It's if you can, it's not about control. If I mean, control is good. That's better than not control. But if you can be self-regulated and have enough access to your safety state, enough empathy, then everyone's going to be better off. If you interact with your kid in that state, you're going to be way more patient. You're not going to take things personally if they, challenge you. And you're probably going to be more focused on things like, well, their feelings, yeah. But especially with teenagers, if there's an issue to talk about, you'll be more focused on the issue versus the little things they do and say to get you off track. So but you got to be in this really well regulated place to be able to have patience and empathy and stay focused on at least your goal of the conversation. But yeah, self-regulation would be the portal to all those things.
Yeah, wow. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Okay, so
Yeah,
we have covered so much, and yet I could probably ask you another 10, 20 questions, and we could go on and on about this, but
it's fun.
you
Yeah.
have work, you have your family. I am so grateful to have you on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've learned a lot myself. I already knew that I probably knew 10% of what you know with all my reading and research. I'm like, oh man, he's going to blow it out of the water. But I found it really insightful, and I'm just grateful that you've been able to come on and share with us.
I'm really glad. I'm glad it was helpful, and I appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you so much. Seriously.
Is there one final little kind of comment or reminder or little tip, anything you want to leave people listening with?
Yeah, be kind to yourself, please. And maybe this is prompted by a parent I'm working with currently. Like, you're probably doing good enough. If you're listening to this podcast, like you're on the right track. Be kind to yourself. Um, yeah, that's it. Just be kind to yourself. You're on the right path. Keep going. And you and your kiddos are going to be like so much better off for it if you just keep going. That's it.
Yeah. Hey everyone, it's me again. I hope that conversation gave you almost like a big sigh of relief and actually some powerful new insights. Like I said right at the start, there were some things that we talked about, Justin and I had no idea. I was even like learning new stuff. So it was really helpful for me too, and I hope you guys loved it. If you want to learn more about Justin's work and his podcast, Stuck Not Broken, or how to connect with him, all the links are going to be in the show notes for you guys. Now I have something for you guys just before we go. I know parenting can be so hard, especially when you're dealing with things like whining or refusal or aggression or defiance, quote unquote defiance. I have created a 10-module course that takes you on a journey beneath the surface of your child's behavior, helping you to understand what's really going on inside their developing brain and a dysregulated nervous system. So if you love this stuff that we were talking about in today's conversation, this is the next step for you. If you found yourself feeling triggered or stressed or reactive, then this course is going to show you how to change your approach to create a calmer, more connected relationship with your child. The course is called Decoding and Diffusing Challenging Behavior in Kids. You're going to learn exactly how to respond effectively in those tough moments so that you have lasting change rather than just relying on threats and bribes and punishments. You know, all that stuff that we don't like, but we just fall back on sometimes. So this course is for you if you answer yes to any of these questions. Number 1, does your child frequently display challenging behaviors like lashing out or hitting or defiance? Maybe they shut down. Maybe they go non-responsive and just won't open up. Do you ever feel overwhelmed or really stressed when your child refuses to listen or to cooperate? Are timeouts and threats and punishments just no longer working or maybe even making things worse? And do you really want to understand what is happening in your child's brain and their nervous system during these emotional outbursts? And finally, are you looking for strategies to help your child regulate their emotions and behavior in a positive, supportive way? Honestly, this is exactly why I created the course Decoding and Diffusing Challenging Behavior in Kids. There are way too many misunderstandings and even myths about kids and their tricky behaviors. So by the end of the course, you will have a much deeper understanding about why challenging behaviors like yelling, hitting, and defiance are coming up. You'll have such a better insight into your child's nervous system and how it contributes to their stress responses. Also, an individualized approach to recognizing when your child is in fight or flight or freeze. So of course, tools to help your child calm down and return to a regulated nervous system state. And lastly, clarity for yourself on when and how to talk about their behavior, problem solve, and creating solutions for lasting change. There are actually some exclusive bonuses that I've put in this course. There's an incredible exercise on understanding the nervous system and behavior, and it's really designed to help you apply these courses strategies and support your child in real life situations. So I really invite you to have a look at the details in this course. So I would love to offer this as a gift to you for a huge 50% off. It is one of my most popular courses. We have such great reviews from parents who have taken it. And I've also added a I gave it a go guarantee, meaning that if you give it a go and you watch some videos in the first 7 days and you get nothing out of it, I will give you a full refund, no questions asked. I would love you to go check it out. This could be a game changer for your family. All the details are going to be in the show notes. Just look out for where it says Decoding and Diffusing Challenging Behavior course. Thanks for being here, and I will see you guys next time on the Emotionally Intelligent Parenting Podcast.